Hello, my name is Ving, I play on the Kodash server EU, and my main class is Mesmer. In the following clips I'm gonna show you some of my normal fights. I hope you enjoy watching. In this clip I'm attacking an elementalist at bay, but then I get attacked from behind, so quickly scepter block into my torch to get a better overview, then I weapon swap duelist into sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to burst the thief down. I use my decoy to go for the stomp. I get the successful stomp, and at this point I pull a little bit out. Because with this spec I'm really squishy and I have to be very careful. Now I'm looking for a good opening again. I use my duelist, then I stun him to interrupt the healing. I dodge through the necrofields, then into sword 3 to sword 2 to apply heavy burst. Then I dodge backwards out because the thief got down. I use my veil, I dodge through the necrofields again, then I go for the stomp. I use my distortion in case I get interrupted and get the successful stomp. Then I use my torch invis to give me a little break, and I briefly hit the elementalist to see how hard I hit. But then I get feared, I use my decoy as a stun break and decide to switch targets to the necromancer. I dodge through the necromancer's field to prevent the damage, into sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to give him a hard burst. Then I stun her to interrupt the heal. Fighting a necromancer is always very difficult for me because I'm almost never running any condition clear except for my torch. Now I use my torch invis into summoning clone and I stay close to trigger the flames onto her. Then I weapon swap to summon my duelist into sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to burst her really low. Then I have to pull out because I feel a lot of pressure and heal up for a little bit. Then I open again with my scepter 3. She uses her elite, so I go in and trigger my torment onto her with my scepter 2. This is a good move because you can always trigger a torment on her elite form. Then I summon my duelist into sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to get it down. Then I pull out for a little bit because she's still very dangerous. I heal up, I go to her again, I dodge through the necrofields to prevent the damage, go for the stomp, use my distortion in case I get interrupted, and get the successful stomp. At this point I want to go for the rest of the group. I want to target the thief, but he uses his refuge instantly, so I go for the elementalist instead. I open with my scepter 3, then I weapon swap into sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to give him a hard time and a lot of pressure. Then I use my decoy to give me a little break. He uses mist form and kites me around. I stay as close as possible on him. Then I use my sword 3 to immobilize and shatter, and sword 2 to give him a lot of damage. Now I want to open again, but he uses tornado form and knocks me around. I stay on him and wait for the tornado form to end, use my sword 3 to sword 2 into shatter to get him down. He uses mist form, then I use my decoy to go for the stomp. I get a successful stomp and retreat from this fight. Next clip starts with me dodging a stun from my hammer warrior. I'm fighting an elementalist and a warrior, so I have to be very careful. I use my chaos storm me to force them to tag me in it. I get stunned from the elementalist, so I use my decoy into summoning my berserker of my greatsword to give him a hard time. Then I use my greatsword to 2 to shatter to apply heavy damage and get him down. He uses his mist form, I go for the stomp, then I use my distortion to prevent the interrupt from the warrior who uses his knockback. Then I just keep auto-attacking him until he retreats, and then I pull out from this fight. The next clip is about me interfering with a Zerg vet at the spawn tower. I try to choose a good target. I find myself the ranger because he would be really squishy and is already really low. I try to stick on him as hard as possible. I use my torch into summoning clone, into weapon swap duelist into sword 3 sword 2. It lags a little bit because there's such a big fight around him. I try to stay on her, she's really low. I use my decoy to go for the stomp. I use my distortion in case I get interrupted. Then I use my blink and to mass invisibility to pull out of there and retreat. The next clip is about me being chased out of North Camp by a small group of enemies. I try to pull them into open field to get a better overview of the action. I go for the thief as my target because he would be the squishiest and the best target for me to get. He uses his cloak and dagger from his dagger spec to give him stealth. So I recognize that there is nothing really I can do against the thief because he would just pair me stealth. I go for the warrior because he is at this point already really low. I use my veil to pull out from a little bit because I got a lot of pressure from them. I stay on the warrior as hard as possible. I use my scepter 2 to block them, then I weapon swap duelist into sword 3 sword 2 to pin the warrior really low and get her down. I try to go for her. I use my distortion, but it doesn't last long enough so the guardian could knock me back. Then I apply a little bit of pressure onto the thief. Then I use my mass invisibility to get a little bit of a break and pull out. Then I go for the warrior again because he's already really low. I block the immobilize from the guardian's hammer. I use my duelist into sword 3 sword 2 to get the warrior really low. I use my decoy to go for the stomp. and get the successful stomp from here. At this point I have to pull out because I have everything on CD and I just feel a lot of pressure from them. I get stunned, so I use my blink to get out. I speed that part up because it's just a fight for me to survive. Some information I want to tell you about me in 1vx fights is that I'm staying as close as possible to my targets to apply as many conditions from my clones if they explode onto them, have a better chance to win such fights. Now I just pull out and retreat from this fight. In the next clip I find myself attacking an up-leveled ranger. I follow her to burst her down. She gets stunned. I go for the stomp. While stomping I see an enemy thief appearing from behind. She gets me really low. I use my decoy into heal to heal a little bit up, then I go with my sword 3, sword 2 into shatter to get her down. I use my veil to try to go for the stomp. She ports to upper ground and manages to get me down. Luckily I can rally from the Minotaur. Then I use my distortion into mass invisibility to give me a little break here and to pull a little bit out. After a while I find the enemy thief again. I stun her, summon my duelist, sword 3 into sword 2 into shatter, then I use my diversion to days.All to prevent anything from her, then I go for the stomp. She gives up and I can pull out and retreat from this fight. In the next clip I get into a fight north at Bay. I block with Receptor 2 to apply condition damage into Torch, Invis, Summon Clone, Weapon Swap, Duelist, Sword 3, Sword 2 to pin the ranger down. I choose the ranger as my target because of the enemies he would be the squishiest. I stay as close as possible and I try to stay always behind my target so she has a hard time hitting me back. Then I get a lot of pressure from the others, so I use my decoy to give me a little break. Then I open with Receptor 3 to apply confusion stacks. I go for the stomp, use my distortion to prevent the interrupt from the ranger. I dodge out, heal up, then I go in again, weapon swap into sword 2 to prevent the damage from them. Then I go for my veil to get a better overview of what was happening. At this point I don't have enough damage to kill someone of them, so I have to pull out and retreat from this fight. In the next clip I find myself an engineer who was already low. I try to go for him, I give him a hard time and a lot of pressure, he gets down. I use my decoy to go for the stomp. While stomping I see other enemies approaching from behind. I stun the warrior and try to use my sword 3 into sword 2 to prevent the hammer stun from him, but I was too slow. Then I choose another target, the elementalist, because at this point he would be the squishiest. Then I recognize that there is a condition thief around us and I have to be very careful because he can give me a hard time and a lot of pressure, because with this spec I have almost no condition clear. So I stay on the elementalist because he is got really low from my conditions. I stun him and stay as close as possible to him because he's getting really low because of the conditions I am applying. I get interrupted, then I use my torch invis to the summon clone to give my burning damage to him. He gets down. I try to go with my decoy to go for an easy stomp. He uses Mistform, I use my veil to go for the stomp again. I use my distortion to prevent the hammer stun from the warrior. At this point I have to use my mass invisibility and my blink to pull out because I have nothing left to fight them. In the next clip I find myself an up-level guardian at the edge of his group. I go in with my torch invis, summon clone duelist, sword 3, sword 2 to shatter to burst him low. I go for the stomp, use my distortion to prevent his knockback and pull out before his group even noticed that I was there. In the next clip I find myself in front of the enemy keep. One ranger overextends too much and someone from a server and me just burst him down. Then I see the enemy warrior appears, I block with Receptor 2 into duelist, I stun him, sword 3 into sword 2 to shatter. He gets very low. I keep on him, I use my decoy to stay as close as possible. At this point I have to be very careful about the guards and the enemies around me, because with this spec I'm really squishy and open to damage and burst from the enemies. Now I use my veil to buy me some time and get a better overview. I stun the enemy, use my sword 3 to sword 2 shatter to get him down. I prevent his interrupt by using distortion to get invulnerable. Then I use my mass invisibility, I heal up and use my decoy to get out of there and retreat from this fight. The next clip starts with me pulling out of a fight at North Camp. I feel too much pressure from the Guardians, so I have to fight at the edge of the camp. I'm fighting a Necromancer and an Elementalist. While fighting a Necromancer, I have to be very careful about this high condition damage, because with this spec I'm very vulnerable to them. At this point I have to pull to higher grounds and get a little bit of a reset of this fight. So I get up and they follow me. I block to give the elementalist some torments to apply heavy condition damage on him as well, while pressuring the necromancer so I can fight two at once. At this point I use my veil to give me a little break. Then I recognize that the elementalist got really low from my torment stacks before, so I use my duelist in the sword 3 sword 2 combo to get him down. Then I go for my decoy to go for an easy stomp. I get a successful stomp, then I dodge out, heal up a little bit, but then I see in the background a lot of enemies approaching. So at this point I want to find out if I have enough damage left to fight them, but I quickly see that I don't have. So I want to find a way to escape. I get feared, so I use my blink as a stun break, then I use my mass invisibility to get out of there and retreat from this fight. The next clip starts with me getting chased out of North Camp by a small group. I choose the thief as my target because he's the biggest threat. I open with a Scepter 3 into my Torment block to apply heavy condition damage. Then I use my torch in the duelist in the sword 3 sword 2 to get him low, but he shadow steps away and uses his refuge. At this point I have to find a new target, and an up-leveled elementalist appears and helps me with my decision. I use my sword to pin him down, then I use my Scepter block to apply heavy condition damage with my Torment. In the background I see the enemy thief appearing again, so I try to go for him again. He gets down, so I use my decoy to go for the stomp. Then I get my blink up in case he ports, but he doesn't try to, so I go for the up-leveled elementalist again. I open with my Scepter 3, then I go near him and proc my Torment on his ring of fire. He gets down. He uses his mist form to get away, but I just go for him and go for the easy and successful stomp. Then I try to fight the others, but in the end I have to retreat from this fight. The next clip starts with me attacking a small group at North Camp. I choose the engineer as my target because he was already low. I open with my Scepter 3 into Scepter 2 block to apply Torment, into Torch Invis, into Duelist, Sword 3 and Sword 2 to burst the engineer really low. I use my decoy because he got down to go for the stomp. I use my distortion in case I get interrupted, and use my blink to pull a little bit out of this fight. At this point I have to wait and see how many of the enemies will chase me. I block to apply my Torment stacks, then I go with my Torch Invis to summon Clone, then I go with my Scepter 3 to apply Confusion stacks on the Guardian and get him really low and apply heavy pressure onto him. He retreats, but I stay at the edge of the camp because I don't want to get into it again. I use my veil to reset a little bit of the fight. Then I see in the background the engineer who I downed before, and I know in effect that he is really squishy. So I choose him as my target again. I use my Torch Invis into Duelist, Sword 3 to Sword 2 to burst him really low. Then I use my decoy to give me a little break and stun him to pin him down. He gets really low and down. I go for the stomp. I use my distortion in case I get interrupted and get a successful stomp. Then I blink out and watch backwards to see how many of them chasing me, and I just retreat from this fight. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time, and my builds are in the description down below. Bye!